Okay, so I'd just like to do this sort of update video on sort of where I am and what I'm doing. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm trying to put together a file-based system for some of these things. So here on the left, I've got a file that just has the different areas, which are going to be turned into by this design loader here, and later on by the real game, different areas to play in a sort of roguelike, I'm hoping. So on the left-hand side, I just sort of define what I want each area to be like and where it can occur and things like that, what it can connect to, those sorts of things. And then the design loader reads it, puts it all into place, and then goes with it. So the design loader, all it's going to do is it's just going to sort of put the levels together and give me a sort of depth chart of all these sort of things. I might as well just go through that once. And so this is more or less what it does, right? So you see down here, it's telling me all sorts of different things mostly for troubleshooting purposes. Like most of these stupid applications that are mostly for error checking, I spend about half to 2/3 of my time debugging the error checking thing. So the way I've set this up is I want to always start with this dwarf road, and then there are different areas which you could go to. This guy could either go to the Goblin Caves, or it could go to the Dwarf Hotel, and we've gotten Goblin Caves. Also, each time I do this, each iteration for this, the Dwarf Road is going to get a little bit longer. In this particular case, for the idea that I had, what I want to do is I want the Dwarf Road to be being cleared out, right? And each time you complete the entire thing, so this would be what you do for the first iteration. See, there's a 1 here. So for this first iteration, you'd go through this dwarf road, go through the Goblin Caves, do a sort of quest, which is a little bit like that completed attempt that I did earlier that I had to change because I'm refactoring everything. But I go through the Goblin Caves here, and you'd finish your quest. After you finish the stupid quest, we add more stuff. So now we've got these farms. So the Goblin Caves are on the other side of the farms, and now we've done something here where all of a sudden you'll be able to open up the farm caverns. In another video, I'll show why the farm caverns are off limits before this, which will be interesting. But in this case, the farm caverns are off limits in the first run. In the second run, we do something where you've got something that will unlock the farm caverns, like a key, but instead it'll be a potion, right? And then you complete whatever you have to do in the farm caverns, or maybe what you have to do is in the Goblin Caves or in the Dwarf Road, but you have to go in the farm caverns to do that eventually. And the way I'm putting these things together is I want to have sort of different quests both within each area and between areas each time you run through it, and have them be random so that you don't actually know exactly what's going to happen each time. Although you'll have a set of things that are kind of normal, and then things that are a little occur less often, right? So now we've got the farm caverns going on, and the next one we add on the Goblin Tunnel. So this pushed the farm caverns off here. Now you have Goblin Tunnels coming off the Goblin Caves. Sometimes the farm caverns would have come off the Goblin Tunnels, for example. So these don't always happen in the same order. So now we've got more things coming down. And now we go to the Goblin Town here the next time. This is a little bit unfortunate. I've got two things on top of each other. At some point I just decided to stop playing with the viewer. So this doesn't have anything to do with the viewer, the reason why we have two things on top of each other. It's just that, at some point you end up with things ending up on top of each other. But from the Goblin Town, at the other end, you can get down to the Dwarf Road, right? So we've got the Dwarf Road coming down, but we were having this cleared out for a while down here, but for some reason it stops, and now what has to happen is it has to be cleared up here, and it's not going to do that till you get down here, finish a nice little quest, and then every time it'll go up a little bit. Also, more things will happen here, right? Finish some quests, and now this little diagonal line means that the dwarf roads are connected completely at this point. And now you have something coming down here. Got the dwarf road coming up and down, and you have the dwarf hotel. The dwarf hotel can show up on the first iteration. In this case, it just ended up there on the last. Now we got the dwarf fort, which will sort of prevent access to the dwarf road, which basically keeps the goblins up on this upper level, this upper tier here, so I don't have to worry about having, really, really massive goblins running around later on for players. And then, each time something will happen. I'm not exactly sure that what I'm doing here is what I'd want to do, keep extending the dwarf road, but that's what I've done here. So that's one way this is going to work out. That's one run of it. So we had goblin caves, farm caverns, goblin tunnels. Let's see if we get a different thing going on. If I run it again, we should, right? But we start off again with the dwarf road, goblin caves. That's the more likely of the two, I think. Alternatives, goblin tunnels, dwarf hotel now. So last time we did dwarf road, goblin caves, farm caverns, goblin tunnels. Now we don't have the farm caverns at all, and we've got that dwarf hotel starting out. Now we've got goblin town that goes to the dwarf road. More goblin tunnels coming up at the top. That's interesting. And then we have farm caverns, and it takes a while to get the dwarf fort in this case. I have to do something. There are a couple of places here where it's possible to have something happen that I don't want to have happen. For example, one of those is the goblin tunnels coming off of the dwarf hotel right at the top. What I'd like to have possible would be right at the very beginning, right? Have the dwarf road connect to the dwarf hotel, and then at the bottom of the dwarf hotel come into the goblin tunnels. Or if you don't end up with the dwarf hotel by the time you get to the goblin tunnels, I'd like to have a road from the goblin tunnels to the dwarf hotel from the bottom, and have a different sort of set of possible scenarios based on going up instead of down the dwarf hotel. So those are the sorts of things that I am planning to do there. So it's been a little while, but I'll show you the two different things that I've done after the refactoring for the actual level design. So let's see. Let's start with the trees. Okay, so the trees, I'll do that because it's faster. It uploads pretty quickly. So there it is. The little brown spots are trees. The white spot is the dude. I'll change the scale a little bit. I've tried to put the trees in a way that you'd end up with clearings if it was large enough, but it's not really that large, so you don't see it. But obviously you can move around. Let's get it bigger here. I think this is still a little bit smaller, but you see they've got these trees in here. They are objects sitting in an actual spot, so they are something that at some point I might be able to work with. You'll notice that there's not enough room here to squeeze through, and I can just step past things, but like so. But that's not the only way to do things. Okay, so that's just my trees. I'm just really happy that I made my trees work, even though they're just brown spots right now. Maybe at some point I can add something to make it look a little more like there's foliage on top, and add some brush. So that's what's going on in this particular thing. That's what I'm thinking about working on in there. So I need a little bit of brush or something to make that interesting. And now the sort of longer one. This will take a little while, but this is going to build up a maze for me down here. You'll notice occasionally things are happening. Right now, the way I put it together, it's taking a little bit too long because I'm checking things in a less than ideal way. That's part of the reason why I was going through that design loader, that different way of looking at things, so that I can still have the different sorts of areas. Like I'm going to show you some different areas coming out here. One will be sort of like the Goblin Tunnels, and one will be sort of like the Dwarf Hotel. Not very much like it, but a little bit like it. Basically, one will be a bunch of random stuff, and one will be not so random. I think it'll end up being exactly the same every time because this is all seeded, and I've got the seed stuck in there right now. So that I can test things, but so I won't do it a whole bunch of times. But let's look at what the sort of cavey stuff is looking like right now. The little yellow dots there, those are just stitches. I don't know if you can make out the difference in contrast or the contrast between these things. You see how it says here level. This is sort of level ground here. I'm not sure if I'm going to do anything with the uneven ground, but I do have uneven ground here. So it's just checking the height of each one of these little things, each one of these little squares. The height is, sort of a different level at each one of these things. So I expect about a fraction of a foot for most of these. I don't have the output here saying how uneven each thing is. I might want to do that at some point. But I've got these different things here. You can see that I have this error here where I've got a room up on top of a bunch of other stuff. If I had some sort of line of sight thing, I'd be able to do a Jeff Late deal and just make you think that I was doing something clever. It's not clever, it's just all that checking that was going on at the beginning didn't actually work, and I still got stuff going up on top of each other. So I've got a bunch of different rooms here stuck together randomly. That's more or less what this one's going to do. I've got another little random thing up here, but it's a little less random. It shouldn't look as random because it's kind of bigger. So I've got this entry room that's landing, actually. So I call this the entry room. This is equivalent to, maybe a little bit larger than, but still equivalent to that dwarf road. And then here I've got a landing, and on the other side of the landing, obviously I have these stairs. So you see I've got this nice smooth transition between levels, and then I've got a hallway up here, and it doesn't really go anywhere. But I've got this landing, and again, and a stairway, and you're on uneven ground. If you're on the stairway, it's not a good place to fight. Here, this sort of three area here, if I'm right in the center, you'll see it's supposed to be a doorway, so I could put a door here when I get around to putting doors in there. So that's more or less what this looks like. So I just want to come back here. If you can see the uneven sort of pattern here with the different shades of gray, this is shaded exactly the same way as that stairway, right? The stairway has a gradual change, a uniform change over about 10 or 12 steps, 10 or 12 of these 1 square foot tiles, and then you're taking up a little more room than a normal person would. So it has that nice sort of look where everything's coming down like in a nice even manner, whereas these guys over here are not doing things in that nice way. Instead, I've taken an area and I've sort of randomly changed its positions here, and this could, over the long haul, and you can sort of see it here, randomly, this has got a bit darker shade than all of these things up here. So when we come over here, it should be a little bit lighter. You see it's a little bit lighter when we're over here. So this has actually come down a little bit from these other places. So that's more or less where I am on the 28th of December 2015 before I start adding more interesting things. And the next thing, obviously, is to try to actually integrate some of these maps with the design loader and see if I can actually make something work. So I hope that's been interesting enough for you. That sort of tells you where I'm at. And have a good day. Bye now.